In the world of professional wrestling, where spectacle often overshadows substance, WCW's pay-per-views from 1989 to 2001 were a roller coaster of quality. Yet even within the most forgettable events, there were matches that stood out, not just for their athletic prowess, but for their storytelling and sheer spectacle. Today, we dive into some of the best WCW matches that occurred on what many consider to be the worst pay-per-views of that era.
Welcome, wrestling fans. Today, we're not just talking about the glitz and glamour of WCW's golden matches, but those hidden gems buried in the rubble of less than stellar shows. From the technical wizardry of Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat at Clash of the Champions, which redefined what wrestling could be, to the brutal, no-holds-barred encounter between Chris Benoit and Kevin Sullivan at Uncensored 96, where the Falls Count Anywhere match took us into the men's room. And let's not forget the Cruiserweight Division showcase at Spring Stampede 99, where Rey Mysterio Jr. and Billy Kidman delivered a near 16-minute ballet of high-flying action. These matches, among others, prove that even on WCW's darkest nights, stars shone brighter than ever.
Join us as we explore these matches, dissecting what made them stand out and why they're remembered fondly despite the events they were a part of.
WCW Uncensored 1996 was a hot mess from start to finish, including matches like Colonel Robert Parker versus Medusa, the Booty Man versus Diamond Dallas Page, the Giant versus Loch Ness, and the Mega Powers versus the Alliance to End Hulkamania. It stands to reason that two technical masterminds like Fit Finlay, aka the Belfast Bruiser, and Lord Steven Regal's match would stand out so much on this card. The Belfast Bruiser would win by disqualification, but it didn't take away from how technically sound and proficient this match actually was. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Fit Finlay's glorious mullet too. Jeez, my guy, save for the rest of us. Halloween Havoc 2000 was a mediocre pay-per-view, but the WCW World Tag Team title match was very entertaining. On a card that featured not one, but two handicap matches, a 3-round kickboxing match, and a DNA First Blood match, hidden in the midst of the muck and mire of that card was the Boogie Knights, Alex Wright, Disco Inferno, the Filthy Animals, Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman, taking on the defending WCW Tag Team Champions and members of the Natural Born Thrillers stable, Mark Jindrak and Sean O'Haire, two of the best young big men in the business at that point. A lot of high-flying offense in this match, but ultimately the big men would prevail. And Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman, great showing, but O'Haire and Jindrak proved why they were two of the fastest young rising stars in all of WCW in the year 2000. Bash at the Beach was not one of WCW's biggest pay-per-view events, but a lot of big things took place at the Bash at the Beach pay-per-view over the years, such as 1996, when Hulk Hogan would shock the wrestling world and turn heel, joining the New World Order. Then, in 2000, Hogan again the subject of controversy with the double switch, the turn, screwing Hogan out of the belt, Vince Russo and Jeff Jarrett, the lawsuit that ensued. No, we're not talking about that. This Bash at the Beach 1999 match featured the team of Chris Benoit and Perry Saturn versus the Triad, comprised of the innovator of offense, Chris Kanyon, one of the best mobile big men in the sport's history, Bam Bam Bigelow, and the master of the diamond cutter, Diamond Dallas Page, in heel form. They would go on to win the belts in this match, but it was a showcase of greatness and future legends that no one can or should forget. And these teams will show up in a little bit on this list again. And the match, the second time around, my friends, trust me, it was just as good. My view on Vince Russo has softened over the years because at times he seemed like the voice of reason in a crazy world that is professional wrestling in the year 2024. But back in 2000 when he took over WCW, this was simply not the case. The supposed architect of the Attitude Era put on bad show after bad show until WCW eventually went out of business. There was more to it than that, but New Blood Rising was a terrible pay-per-view. And it featured 2 matches that were worth their salts, and this also featured the infamous Judy Bagwell on a pole match, which was actually a forklift, and it was between her son, Buff Bagwell, and Positively Canyon. But that's not what we're here to discuss. No, we're here to discuss the one match on the card that was actually palatable, and I'm talking about Booker T defeating Jeff Jarrett for the WCW World Heavyweight title. Even though it was an overbooked mess, it still left the fans with a far better taste in their mouth than Goldberg getting into an argument with Vince Russo because he didn't want to take a jackknife powerbomb from Kevin Nash and walking out in the middle of a match after showing up late. The Great American Bash 1999 featured matches such as Hack versus Brian Knobbs, Van Hammer versus Mikey Whipwreck, Buff Bagwell, Disco Inferno, and a very sad display of Ric Flair versus Roddy Piper. But those aren't the matches we're going to talk about. We're going to return to the rivalry with the Triad, Diamond Dallas Page, Chris Kanyon, and Bam Bam Bigelow versus the World Tag Team Champions, Chris Benoit and Perry Saturn, for another match that would steal the show on a mediocre card. In what was the semi-main event on the card, you would see a lot of outside interference from the heels, a lot of amazing offense from Benoit, Saturn, Page, and Canyon, but in the end, the heels would win. Dean Malenko would take a diamond cutter. The heels would walk away with the gold as the new WCW World Tag Team Champions. What do you think of our 5 matches on subpar pay-per-views that stood head and shoulders above the rest? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, do all the YouTube things. Leave a comment. It helps us in the algorithm. You can join as a channel member, $2.99, $4.99. Join us as a brain buster on Patreon for $2 a month. If not, just subscribe. It's free. It always will be. I'm Etep from Wrestling with Horror. We will see you on the next one. Remember, it's always better to burn out than fade away.